wonderful listeners. Welcome back to Eclipse Reading. This is the start of a new story. It is called No Feelings Allowed. It is based in the Sword and Shield game, Pokémon. Disclaimer, I do not own the story like usual. I might post a few of my own original stories on Wattpad, but this is a Raihan XOC, which means original character, for any of you who do not know what that means. It will have mature content, and this is by TMWolf on Wattpad. I hope you enjoy. Something was wrong. Galar particles were heavy in the air, making it feel as though a pressure was coming from everywhere in the Hammerlock Stadium. Breathing felt a little more difficult, as if high on a mountain. Skin tingled and Pokémon squirmed uneasily in their balls, as did the ones on the field. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see what was going on. 1 minute they'd been enjoying a match between gym leader Raihan and a challenger hoping to make it to the cup next year. So far it had been a good battle, but now it was put on hold as the two competing trainers looked around uneasily. The leader frowned, not liking the situation one bit. His band was glowing brightly, practically supercharged. He could tell his Pokémon were itching to Dynamax because of it, but he held them back. Something wasn't right. His gut was sure of it, and it was rarely wrong. Raihan pulled up the small microphone he kept clipped in his shirt's collar to speak with the league media team. Postpone the match. I want to evac the crowd. Something's not right. And don't worry, I'll take the fallout from the bigwigs. You lads just do your thing. Right away, Raihan, sir. The voice on the other side replied, their own nervousness clear. In a way, the gym leader was glad for it. It meant he'd get no resistance. It was technically his gym anyways, so he had the final say-so regardless. But any loss of revenue from a match was a big deal. He'd get a decent lecture from the executives if the situation wasn't serious enough. Thankfully, he had a feeling it was. Raihan returned his Pokémon and approached the challenging trainer, who blinked in surprise. They returned their team member just as the announcement rang out. Due to technical difficulties, the gym challenge match between Raihan and trainer 027 has been cancelled. For your safety, we ask you to all evacuate in a neat and orderly manner to your designated exits, and proceed outside to the safe zones and or nearest Pokémon Center. We thank you for your cooperation and apologize for the inconvenience. Unhappy cries rang out, but not enough that Raihan was concerned. The crowd could tell something was off, too, and so did his opponent. Sorry to call it short. I was enjoying that match, but something's wrong, and I don't think it's safe to continue. I promise we'll finish things once we figure things out, alright, mate? He explained, holding out his hand. The trainer, despite being a little miffed, shook it. Raihan gestured. Head back on ahead to the locker room and get your things. I have to make sure the crowd gets out safe. The trainer thankfully didn't argue and made his way to the locker room. The gym leader imagined the kid might try to challenge the league about it, demanding it be their win because he'd canceled it, but he doubted it would work out that way. It wasn't like the kid was beating him anyways. Shaking his head, Raihan turned to the crowd, watching to make sure they all were moving smoothly. So far, so good, but damn was the air thick now. It reminded him of the dens in the wild area. Raihan paused, brain suddenly moving very quickly. If it was like a den, then... As if on cue, surprised cries rang out. From the crowd, a Pokeball flared on the belt of a young man. The red glow, now a brilliant wild magenta that surged with energy. The light it gave off flared towards the field. It faded as quickly as it came, revealing a Haxorus, only it wasn't normal. It howled and thrashed and clawed at the grassy pitch, its body in pain as it glowed with a reddish haze, electrical sparks coming off its armored frame, its pincers gnashed together, practically foaming at the mouth. Its eyes were wild as the energy surged further into its body. Raihan knew what was happening. He knew he couldn't get there in time to stop it. It was an uncontrolled Dynamax. With a scream that made his ears hurt, the Haxorus suddenly blew up, almost literally. Its size expanded exponentially until its head almost reached the highest floors of the stadium. Its legs made the ground shake when it landed, and its deafening roar made more than a few windows and screens shatter, possibly along with eardrums. The panic set in at once. A scream turned into countless more, and the crowd began to run and scramble over one another in a frenzied flight to escape the rampaging Pokémon. Raihan cursed loudly and brought out his entire team. He thanked Arceus that they hadn't had to exert themselves too much in the battle against the trainer. Go distract it, dodge its attacks, and keep its attention off the crowd, lads, he barked. They did as commanded, charging forth to take on the massive beast. He considered Gigantamaxing as Duraludon, but the resisting clash would most likely do more harm than good, with the Hexorus out of control and the crowd not much better. That left the old-fashioned way, sending in his trusted Pokemon to do the dirty work, all as one unit, while he worked to lead the people out to safety. Most were too scared to really listen, but they seemed to all be doing their best to head to the exits. Already, about half had gotten through by the time the Dynamax started, but the stragglers were still in trouble. He could tell some people had been trampled on, and the others had leaped onto the pitch in some crazy attempt to reach any kind of exit. He made sure to have his Pokemon work double hard to keep the Haxorus from going after them, but the dragon was out of control. Its movements were wild without any sense. It was just lashing out, unleashing outrage and dragon pulses that would burst the ground apart or crush the stadium railings if it didn't hit his Pokemon. Shh! Fall back, he bellowed when he saw the Haxorus lift its head, its pincers flaring with energy. It was a guillotine attack. He'd seen Leon's do a similar move all the time, and with its size, it would leave a crater in the field. His Pokemon thankfully obeyed, but the sheer impact of the Haxorus horns to the ground unleashed a shockwave that sent him stumbling backwards and was even difficult for his sturdy Turtonator to withstand. He cursed, not knowing what to do. The dragon was way too strong, the Dynamax energy completely overpowering it. There were still people in the crowd, but he could tell his Pokemon were slowly being drained. They already felt the pressure of the particles, and their opponent was hitting hard and heavy. If they could just last until everyone was out, then maybe he could risk a Gigantamax. His hopes were dashed, however, when from his right and far too close to the Haxorus, he spotted a child. A young boy in a bright yellow Pikachu shirt that was staggering the field. He rubbed at his eyes, his face splattered with the dirt the Haxorus had spewed up. He must have been on the pitch during the impact. He was disoriented and walking right into the dragon's sight. Of course, the crazed Pokemon saw and let out a fearsome shriek. The kid jumped, startled, and quickly staggered again, tripping and falling backwards. He managed to scramble up, but the Haxorus was after him. Raihan cursed as he took off at a sprint, his stomach and chest clenched as he watched the Pokemon come within the reach of the child. He wasn't going to make it. A flash of orange and tan made him pause, nearly tripping. In what was once only air, an Arcanine appeared, right behind the kid. An arm adorned in blue reached out, catching the child from behind and pulling him into the body the limb belonged to. The child instinctively clung. The Arcanine spun on its paw, and just as the Haxorus opened its jaw to crunch down, they vanished. In the blink of an eye. It happened so fast, Raihan thought he'd imagined it, but then the Pokemon appeared again, skidding to a halt to his left. He saw them proper now. He realized the child was clinging to a woman who rode on the back of the Arcanine. She had hair to match her Pokemon's type and a set of equally fierce hazel eyes that met the Haxorus dead on. Her Arcanine unleashed a mighty roar, causing the dragon to flinch ever so slightly. It was exactly what they needed. Go, Arcanine, now! To the exit! She bellowed, and her fire type leaped into a powerful sprint. It wasn't the same speed as before, but it was faster than the Haxorus could keep up, especially when the Arcanine sped between its legs, right beneath its lumbering body. It shrieked, trying to turn around quickly, and Raihan thought the erratic movement might catch the woman and her Pokemon, but her fire type was too quick, too nimble. They made it through the gauntlet, and the woman and had her Pokemon crouched down quickly to let the kid off. She urged him to stay back where it was safe before pointing to the back of the field. Pointing back to the field. Let's go. We need help to stop it. Use flamethrower and grab its attention. The Arcanine howled in compliance, charging back in without fear. As soon as it neared the Pokemon's lowered, hissing face, it pounced, landing on one of its tusks, now large enough to cling to. Its furred muzzle opened up and unleashed a fierce flame that struck the Pokemon straight in the face. Of course, it didn't do much damage, but the fire still burned, and the Haxorus roared, flinging its head. Arcanine released its hold, sending them flying, but righted itself so it landed on its feet. Its trainer frowned, not liking the situation one bit, as she clung to her mount's mane. Raihan watched a flurry of emotion cross the woman's face. Briefly, their eyes met, and he could tell she had a plan. Call it intuition, but hers was the face of someone like that. He'd seen it enough times when fighting his rival, the very same moment when the Arceus Forsaken bastard would turn the tide of the battle and take away any hope for victory. He normally hated that look, but this time Raihan was glad for it. Hey, I got your back, sweetheart. You do whatever you need to do and I'll make it happen, he called out, waltzing forward walking forward some with his Duraludon by his side. Above, his Flygon fired off attacks or shot right by the Hexorus's face to draw its attention. On the ground, his Gudra, Torkoal, and Turtonator either worked a defensive ring or used support attacks too. Thanks. To be honest, I didn't want to have to use this yet, but Lucario, I need you, bud, she called, and her Pokemon emerged in a flash of light. She motioned for it to hop on, which it did. Her Arcanine, thankfully, could handle the extra weight, it seemed. It's time for that special move combo of yours we've been working on, but the timing's going to be tricky. You're going to need to have to run on the rails up there. Can you guys up for it? Arcanine and Lucario bellowed in agreement, the defiance of their enemy. Raihan was both a little impressed and dumbfounded by her idea, and was only a little miffed that she was ignoring him some now. He was focused on stopping the chaos, though, so he decided to let it slide. After all, they had a Dynamax Pokemon to take down. All right, hold tight, Lucario. Arcanine, get us up high, she commanded, and her fighter wrapping its arms around her, the fire-type Pokemon shot into a sprint once more. The movement made the gym leader pause, surprised the woman was still on for the ride. He watched her head towards the stands, which thankfully were mostly empty. The crowd had gotten to safety, giving Arcanine all the leeway it needed to leap into the bleachers, racing over the seats and to a higher box platform. The Haxors hadn't missed their actions, of course, and shrieked madly. Waves of energy formed and shot from its body. Dragon Pulse, she knew. Only so much worse and more powerful. No, you don't. Have at 'em, boys. Show 'em what we're made of, Raihan snapped, working hard to keep an eye on both the Dynamax Pokemon and the woman trainer. His Pokemon complied, blasting and howling at the Haxorus to steal its attention away. By some miracle, her Arcanine hadn't slowed down, even as it went higher and higher, leaping from box to box until it reached the rails near the top. Lucario, go, now! She screamed, voice echoing. Her fighter Pokemon launched off Arcanine's back to the railing above. It lunged forward, coming to just above the Dynamax Pokemon's head. The Haxorus followed her warrior, hissing angrily as it readied another Dragon Pulse. She howled, "Now! Extreme Meteor Mash!" Power in the form of light filled her Lucario just as the Haxorus fired its attack. And one moment the fighter was on the railing, the next it was gone. The Dragon Pulse hit the metal construct, obliterating them, just as the fighter reappeared, right at the Haxorus's crown. With a howl, the power it built concentrated at its paw, and in a split second it struck, slamming its glowing fist right into the dragon's skull. The resulting strike let off a magnificent crack, and a wave of sheer pressure unleashed from the power increased by its intense velocity blew across the stadium's canopy. The Haxorus's cry was cut midway, and it began to fall backwards. The Dynamax energy burst as it did so, throwing Lucario back with a yelp. It, too, was falling as the Haxorus began to shrink, but before it even neared the ground, Arcanine was there, along with the woman who grabbed her Pokemon in midair, not unlike the child. Arcanine hit the ground a little rough, wincing as it skidded to a halt. Her Lucario dropped to its toes, staggering briefly, but then righted itself and stood to the left of its trainer. The Haxorus burst energy once more before finally returning to its proper size and collapsing down. It was over. They did it. Not far away, Raihan couldn't help staring in awe of it. He wasn't sure he'd even ever seen anyone fight like that, except maybe Leon. He'd definitely never heard of anyone with combined moves together or with their Pokemon like she was. He didn't recognize her or ever recall battling her either. She was strong, though, which made him curious. She was like an enigma, and the way she sat upon her Arcanine and her Lucario right by her side, both her and her Pokemon with heads held high, was unreal. He couldn't resist releasing his Rotom and snapping a photo. "I owe you a big thanks," he called out, finally free of his brief stupor. The young woman noticed him and then slid off her Arcanine, though quickly turned her attention to Lucario first. He almost clicked his tongue, miffed once again as she picked up the same paw that had dealt the final blow, examining it carefully. Her Pokemon winced visibly, and she sighed as she rubbed its jawline. "Sorry, bud. I didn't want you to have to do that move, but..." Raihan frowned. "Is your Lucario alright, love?" "He might have a broken paw, or at least a fracture. That move was... I only use it in emergencies, and even then, he went a little too fast." I've never heard of that move before, but man, do I owe you my thanks for it. That Haxorus nearly destroyed this place. Oh, you don't need to thank me. I just need to get to the Poke Center. Although, will the Haxorus be okay? He nodded. Yeah, I'll take care of it. You should head out. You can tell Nurse Joy to give you the special treatment on Raihan. She'll know what to do. Oh, and make sure to say hello to your new fan on the way out, love. Looks like he's cheering you on. He. What? Oh. The woman blushed, just now noticing the little kid was still there and whooping and hollering. Her cheeks went redder as she noticed Raihan's grin. Right, good luck, and sorry for the mess. Your match was a good one before things went to shit, if that helps. A little, snickered, and watched as she returned her Lucario to its Pokeball and mounted Arcanine again. The fire type trotted off to the little boy, where she dismounted once more to crouch down to his level. The gym leader couldn't help listening in, thankfully close enough to hear. Hey, kiddo, what are you still doing here? You should be looking for your mom and heading to the Poke Center. Riding a Pokemon using extreme speed can have some, side effects. I'm fine, the child beamed. Mama said if I ever get lost, just go to the Poke Center, so it's okay. We can go together. That was so cool what you did, though. You were so fast in using that fire attack, then bam, bam, bam! The giant Pokemon was blowing things up, and then the blue one was all running and jumping and teleporting, and then boom! It was so cool! You really Ryan looked up when the kid suddenly stopped speaking, and by the woman's stance, he he could see that she was concerned. He watched the kid's face contorted. Then he barfed, right onto his shirt and on the floor. Ryan had to muffle his snort and laugh, and decided to turn his focus to the poor Haxorus that was too exhausted to even move. Near the entrance, the woman just chuckled as he pat the young kid on the head. Yep, that's riding during extreme speed for the first time for you. Come on, kid. I'll get you to the Poké Center, and they'll give you something for that. Although, I think we'll walk this time. She smiled gently and held out her hand. He was a bit shaken by the sudden retching, but he took her hand, and after Arcanine was returned to his ball, walked with the redhead all the way to the Poké Center, where a very awkward conversation with his mother and a change of clothes awaited them. The woman did pause, though, to look back at the man who fought with her, or rather, she with him. He was looking after the Haxorus now, treating it as gently as he could while his Pokemon stood watch. He couldn't help thinking how Raihan, Hammerlock's gym leader, was an interesting guy. He was also pretty handsome and really dang tall. It was too bad they were bound to never meet again. That is the end of chapter 1, A Camera Click. I hope you enjoyed this episode. These chapters are a bit long, so I'm only going to be uploading one chapter at a time, but for Deku Secrets, those chapters are a bit shorter. Since that one's going to be completed soon, I will be doing more MHA content. I thought I'd do a different fandom though, so it was a little refreshing and we didn't have the same thing going on. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and the next chapter, if I do remember correctly, does have some mature content, so look out for that. It will be in the title of the episode if it does. So don't say I didn't warn you. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss another video. Bye bye, my wonderful readers, and have a great day/night.